every child thinks that gender stereotypes equal sex. Like they think that if you cut your hair, you become a boy. Yeah. Every kid thinks that until the age of like 7, maybe people start. It's around then that kind of people learn gender constancy. That like there was a 7-year-old boy who asked me if I was a boy or a girl, and I was like, "What do you think?" And he goes like, "Well, I think you're a girl because there's flowers on your socks." I was like, well, my femme girlfriend gave me these. That's about it.
What's femme?
Well.
Do you know who you're voting for this election?
Because I don't, and the election is around the corner, so it is time to figure it out.
This is the Are We Wrong podcast.
I'm A.I. Norman.
I'm Demi Chang, and we're comedians in Austin, Texas.
We've decided that we're the best people to help you figure out who you should vote for.
Every episode, we have a guest come on to help us think through an election issue.
We'll then each say who we think we'll be aligned with on that issue.
Then we'll explore each topic in detail and be as candid as you wish you could.
And then we'll vote again to see who we think we align with after the discussion.
Are we wrong? Are we right? Let us know in the comments what you think we got right or wrong.
And if you want to tell us what we get wrong in person, you can do that at our live show, our live Are We Wrong show on October 26th at 8 p.m. here in Austin, Texas at Something Cool Studios. We'll have on special guests to help us with each of the issues we still haven't done yet by the time of the show, and they're going to help us figure it out.
Tickets are available now at arewewrong.eventbrite.com or at the link below.
Hope to see you there. So Alana Joblin Ain, and how do you identify?
She, her. Oh, I meant. And I'm a writer. I'm a rabbi's wife.
She's kind of like an honorary rabbi too.
No.
Is that not how it works?
It's not how it works.
I think of you as an honorary.
Yeah, I mean, I'm maybe a wise. Hopefully, I'm passing some wisdom, some wisdom along. But it's not how it works, and I'm glad it doesn't. I don't want to be the rabbi.
Did you watch Nobody Wants?
Yes, I did.
Okay, I only watched the first time.
What is it? Nobody wants to be a rabbi?
No. Nobody wants this. It's actually there's a lot of chatter about it in the Jewish community because people think that the Jewish women aren't represented in a way that's attractive.
Oh, really?
But the biggest issue that I have with it is that I think that the rabbi seems really boring, and I don't know anyone who's that even-tempered who would go into clergy. Just saying.
Most clergies are a little cray-cray.
Well, they're they have fire. If you don't have the fire, you've nothing to say.
Just brimstone, no fire.
Yeah,
I know what
right.
brimstone is.
No, the Jews aren't really into the fire and brimstone.
No, that's the Baptists.
Yeah, mostly the Baptists and the other evangelicals now. Okay, so you're not a rabbi. Are women rabbis? Women are rabbis.
Women are rabbis,
And there's
yes.
not a word for rabbi's wife.
There is.
Okay.
It's an old school word. It's called Rebbitzin. A lot of people don't like it because they think it's too retro or old school, but I didn't grow up with that word, so I don't have any negative associations. For me, it's like first lady, and that's a term that I'm cool with.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
I love in a lot of languages and in Jewish culture has this as well, where there's words where it's so pithy and perfect, and then in English it's 10 words long.
Yes. Yeah.
I watched My Unorthodox Life, and
Yes.
I learned a lot from there.
Awesome.
Just the little words that are just
True.
beautifully capture a thing.
Yes. Yeah, there are words like that, and there are Yiddish words that also just capture a whole mood and experience. Yeah.
I think that's the thing about English. We just go, okay, we won't come up with another word. We'll just sometimes have a few Yiddish words, sometimes use some German or French. No reason for us to reinvent the wheel. We'll just say shtup.
Yeah.
When we mean that.
That's right.
Chutzpah.
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 Do you spell Hanukkah with an H or with a C?
Well, so you can do it either way because it's
a different language.
It's a different language, so it's
Alphabet.
really just transliteration of it.
But
so it can be either way. I do both, depending on who I'm talking to. If I know I'm talking to an H crowd, I'm gonna give them what they want.
Oh,
if
you
I'm talking to
I was gonna say you coats with your Hanukkah spelling.
I do, and I'm adaptable in all sorts of settings.
Which ones do Republicans do? Which ones is it?
I actually
C
don't
for
know.
liberals. I think it's CH for liberals and H
I think
for,
I think that might be. I think that might be on point. Yeah.
I was just thinking about that. It's almost everything you can code as red or blue team.
You
at
can.
this point.
You can.
Yeah.
But why would you want to?
I don't know, but it's funny. It is funny to do it for the spelling of Hanukkah.
It is funny to do it for the spelling of Hanukkah, yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of because I think it seems more authentic to people to put a confusing, to add the C for the part.
Yes.
You know, kind of like the people who are saying Gaza, you know, instead of Gaza, or, you know,
Oh,
you
is
hear
that what they're saying?
There's a whole political
what's going
spectrum
on?
from Gaza, Gaza, or
Yeah.
like try to pronounce Euro. You don't know,
Yes,
like
yes.
there's like 7 ways to pronounce. And
Well,
yeah,
Hanukkah rhymes with Kamala, so maybe the Republicans will say Hanukkah,
Hanukkah.
like Kamala.
Now that anti-Semitism's in, people start pronouncing Hanukkah all the way wrong. Hanukkah, just on purpose.
I mean, it's always been in. Honestly, it's always it never really went fully out.
When would you say it started?
But when I say it started,
Yeah,
like the Crusades. I don't know.
Crusades?
Like
Yeah.
no, I mean like way back. I mean,
Even
it's always
before the Crusades?
Probably, yeah. It's been going
Why?
on for a long
well,
time.
because Jesus was a Jew and they killed him.
Well, right. But some people would blame the Jews for that because they would say
So it must have been before that.
they would say, well, no, actually, I think it's maybe around that. Well, I feel like I need to like dial Dan, my husband or something, because I don't want to get the wrong things. But
He can comment.
yeah,
on
I
our
mean,
YouTube.
people, because after Jesus died and was, for those who believe, resurrected, then it's a different religion. Then that's Christianity's born. And there are people who blame the Jews for his death.
Yeah, so probably either just after he was killed or maybe a couple 100 years later or 70 years later when they started really kind of making a religion out of it. Somewhere in one of those timelines people started.
Because people hate influencers and they just wanted to get him. They're like, he has too many followers. That's not cool.
People were jealous.
They were jealous.
Reach.
Yes. Yeah, and he was not following the conventions. You know, he was actually preaching about love and justice and not following like the orthodoxy of some of the tenets of the religion.
Can you settle the debate of what color was Jesus?
I mean, I know that there's been like a lot of hype about the Palestinian baby Jesus. Like that was a big meme that was going around. Is that in your circles?
I have not, no.
Okay. Well, I can't settle it. No. I mean, I have an idea of what I think Jesus might have looked like, but I don't know. I would not have the authority to say that.
He's like a kind of a Middle Eastern Jew.
Yeah,
He's like
he would be like a bit of a Middle Eastern
A little
Jew.
olivey.
Olive.
Yes,
brown,
that's
probably.
how I picture him.
Like I think
Jesus.
we pretty much know.
There's that show that's supposed to be really good that I haven't seen yet that about this Jesus. It's supposed to be great. I think it's called The Chosen or something. Oh, is that right? I don't know, but it's supposed to be really good, and we'll have to watch it, and then we'll know.
I just want to put that on record because I think the main depiction is still the white
German
stoner looking guy.
Yeah.
Yes,
Like a German model a lot of
right.
people used.
No, probably Jesus was darker than that. But also probably not Palestinian baby. You know,
And he
neither
also
of those
probably
things.
wasn't like black. You
Right.
know, like that's the
That's
thing.
right.
It's like we know where he was from.
That's
so
right.
He's kind of a brown
Yeah,
Jew. Okay.
I think that seems fair. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, but we're not here to talk about the Jews, are we? So we're going to talk about gender in schools.
Let's talk about the Jews
Let's talk
instead.
about,
I know. Now I have wrong thoughts about.
if you can bring the Jews up in
Sure,
in a
I
pertinent
can.
way,
I could
which
bring
you
them
guys are
up.
good at
I
that
can always
usually, yeah.
weave them in to whatever we're talking about.
Okay, so before we start talking about this, let's all vote. Who do we think we're more aligned with in terms of like what you should or shouldn't be teaching about gender, what the policies should be, like all the school related stuff when it comes to LGBTQ? And let's go voting. 1, 2, 3. Okay.
I was going to ask for a Bobby.
Trust me, everything would be Bobby.
Everything would be Bobby.
Oh yeah.
But on this issue, yeah, I mean,
I think this is going to be the one issue where we all probably go Trump on both votes. Like, I don't think anyone's going to sweep, like not Kamala Harris is going to sweep on this one.
Yeah.
Although there's a part of me that thinks she might be less into this woke liberal than everybody else, because I think she was just doing whatever she needed to do to get elected, and she's not really been that woke herself, right? Like,
I've heard that. That's a story I've heard. I also, though, I think that her running mate he's
crazy.
He's really into the
transitioning children.
Yeah, well, I mean, and look, I don't know, yeah.
But Wisconsin is where he's from, right? Is that which one of the little...
Yeah, Minnesota.
Minnesota.
He's
They're all
Minnesota,
the same
yeah.
Minnesota, I think I've heard that. That's one of the sanctuary states where... I mean, I've heard that, like, a kid could run away from there and they'll transition the kid without the parents being involved. That kind of a thing. Or like that if there's a dispute between two parents about whether the kid should be transitioned, one parent can take them to like any kind of thing like that. I've heard all kinds of stuff that like Minnesota is now like the craziest state in terms of transitioning kids. Yes, parental rights, no. So that's again, that's part of why I think we're all unsure. So let's talk about what we actually think about this. It's such a wild... If you had told me as a kid when I was growing up, a little gay kid, and struggling to come out, and it was a whole thing at school and at church and what, if you had told me that we would be to a point in 2024 where I was like, okay, we have so many rights or whatever, like, please guys, dear God, this shit, we have too many gay rights. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? Like, if you had told me that, I would be like, Republicans, please, on the LGBT thing, I just wouldn't have known what to make of it.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
I was going to ask you your wrongest thought on this topic.
Oh, right. We're supposed to start with the wrongest thoughts.
If you wanted to share.
Why don't you go first? Let me collect mine.
Oh, shoot. Well, okay, I'll just... I don't know if this is my wrongest thought, but this is an anecdote that my friend just told me. My friend who is in prison. They have iPads now. It's crazy.
Oh.
Yeah.
How about that?
I don't have an iPad.
Well, go to jail.
Yeah, do you get to keep it or?
No, but he was saying, and he wasn't saying this politically, but I was asking him about, because Ariel has a bit about like trans people in prison, and so he was my source document for that, and he would say like, oh, well, the trannies upstairs, and I was like, oh, just so you know, you can't say that anymore, that term is out. And he's like, well, that's what they call themselves, so I don't, and I have trans friends who call themselves that. And so I was asking him about it, and he was saying, he was like, if you're transitioning, whatever parts you had when you were arrested, that's who you're housed with. So when you're arrested, they strip search you, and he said it's very traumatizing, and that's how they sort you. And then the other thing is, when I asked him about that, he gave this anecdote where he said, when I was a kid, I thought I was a girl, not in like a gender dysmorphia way. He just said, I thought girls were people who had pretty hair and were nice. And it shocked the heck out of me when I realized that girls don't have penises, and that was a huge shocker. And I'm like, that's kind of my issue with the gender rights in schools thing, because we can think all sorts of things when we're kids, and if you...
Every child thinks that like gender stereotypes equal sex. Like they think that if you cut your hair, you become a boy. Every kid thinks that until the age of like 7, maybe people start. It's around then that kind of people learn gender constancy. That like there was a 7-year-old boy who asked me if I was a boy or a girl, and I was like, "What do you think?" And he goes like, "Well, I think you're a girl because there's flowers on your socks." I was like, well, my femme girlfriend gave me these. So that's bad. But
what's femme?
So just that is this thing is like these kids still believe in Santa Claus. So what they know about what it means to be identifying as the other sex, and especially we don't even have a consensus in this culture about how we're using the word sex and gender. So you can't even have a conversation with these kids where anyone really knows what they're saying or what they're hearing.
I mean, my question here is what people think this means. I mean, I think that one of the biggest limitations we have with this is language and what people mean by different things. And we could go on forever about that. But I mean, I personally know, and I'm sensitive and try to have pathos for the fact that there are people who I know who would be very shocked and sad to see me hold up this instead of this for this issue. But I truly believe it is because they do not fully understand what's going on. I mean, I would say every child, regardless of their whatever even they would perceive as their gender identity at that age, even if that's something that was imposed on them from someone else, they all deserve to feel safe and be treated with dignity and respect and be cared for in their schools. I mean, I don't think anyone would argue that. So then the question is like, what are we talking about? You know?
Yeah. And I don't even know that a lot of these people, like actually Kamala and Tim Walz, even know what we're talking about. Right. I think this, for so long, the paradigm of whatever is the new civil rights issue, whatever the blue team is doing, that must be good and right. You want to be on the right side of history, then you can draw a direct line from civil rights for African Americans to gay rights to trans rights. But then because that had become like a schema for how to think of the world, then it was gamed by certain lobbyists and things who kind of came in and got a bunch of crazy stuff that they wanted to happen. And a lot of people who think that they're doing something nice, but they're not even really thinking this through. There's either people who aren't thinking it through, and then I don't know what the deal. I don't even understand fully why certain activists and lobbyists are going for all of this.
I mean, I have a sense from my interaction with this is that it is resting entirely on an idea that trans and non-binary children are at higher risk. Right. And it stands so much on that if that was not there, it would stand on nothing.
Let's try to say self-deletion risk so we don't have to edit out so many, because we have to bleep. YouTube doesn't want you to use the S word.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Can you say died on purpose?
I think so. Maybe we could try that
on
one.
Alive.
People do on Alive.
Yeah.
That's the classic one.
I had no idea. That's unbelievable.
I didn't even know what you were talking about for a second.
Yeah, I'm trying to speak around it.
Yeah.
Well, because there is this thing. I think their reasoning, although YouTube censors so many words that it's, who can even say for a lot of this, is that there can be the elevated risk of contagion when you discuss it. But I think that's when you discuss when a particular person who does it. I think the studies were on that when you talk about so-and-so did this. Yeah. I'm not sure that they actually have any studies that just discussing the concepts and the gravity of the situation actually increases the risk. So just want to put that out there to the listeners and to the YouTube censors. Maybe it's time to just let people have serious conversations about real topics.
Right. I mean, could there slap on like the whatever rating?
Content
this
warning.
is PG, or bring in your folks for this part, or like on the Different Strokes episodes that were serious, they put on like.
I don't know. I feel like it's out there.
Yeah.
And the more, I grew up with kids. I've struggled with mental health my whole life, and I feel like the less you talk about it, although there is the opposite side where people are afraid that if that seems like a glorified thing, then people are like, oh, well, that, like, people remembered that person fondly even though they were struggling. So then it becomes kind of like a romanticized idea. Because then it's this whole narrative of like, oh, well, they were struggling with their identity and they felt like this was their only way out, and that's why we have to give these rights to these schools or whatever it is.
Right. So I would say that for me, the area where I take the biggest exception with this issue is around this. However, we're going to choose to like bat signal that this is what we're talking about. I lost 3 members of my family to intentional not being here. That's pithy.
It becomes a drinking game at home. What different terms can they come up with?
And I will say with this issue, and the next guest is gonna have to wait because I'm gonna tell a story right now, which is that I never thought about this issue. I went to Oberlin, as I mentioned, with my poor SAT scores and all my poems. And I went to graduate school in New York City. I hung around with tons of trans people. I've been around trans people for a couple of decades. I never thought about this issue until I was a parent at a school in San Francisco a few years ago, a little over 3 years ago, and the school decided to remove the boys and girls bathrooms on the second to last day of school, and told the parents after they told the kids. And a lot of parents had questions about this. A K-8 school, But the main thing that it came down to was that the children who are identified as trans or non-binary are at higher risk than the other kids. So a natural question a lot of parents had is like, well, why don't we just make, some separate bathrooms for kids who are non-gender conforming? And the rationale was we cannot do that because those kids are at higher risk of dying on purpose.
Can I just stop you to say real quick, because I was a gender non-conforming kid, obviously.
Yeah.
And, this is before anyone gave me the option to be upset that I wasn't born in a different body or couldn't take puberty, whatever. Okay. But I had issues with restroom. I always had issues with changing rooms and things because I always knew I was different from the other girls. And it was never comfortable for me. And then I developed shy bladder in high school. If you had given me probably no one else is going to be a single stall situation, I would have been so happy. Yeah. And it should just be a situation where you go, there's men's, women's, and anybody can use these single stall ones.
That's right.
Someone who's straight.
That's what a ton of places do. So I, as a parent, suggested that. I said, hey, we have all these other places in San Francisco. We have all these places in Austin too, and we should, that have men's rooms, women's rooms, boys, girls, and then all gender, no gender, whatever. Everyone can go. That was not good enough in this situation. It was like, no, it's all going to be
always my way or the highway.
It's my way or the highway.
Issue.
And so then you lose the allies. And clearly, we're all allies here, okay? Come on.
Right.
Come on. So, when they're coming for the gays.
Exactly.
There's
plenty of trans people who hate this too. And I'm friends with trans people across the spectrum.
There are.
Some of them are totally kind of like, most of the trans people I actually know in real life would either be kind of like eye rolling about that and like, it doesn't need to be that bad. Or they would be like, this really sucks. This is making us look bad. The ones that I know who would be like, it has to be this way are mostly online, which is great. Because I know a lot of trans people in person. And most of them, not all of them totally agree with the way I do, although some of them do, but a lot of them are more like reasonable, like, yeah, let's do the third space. And
but they're also probably over 18. Right. So that might be part of it. But I think that the problem is what I take the most exception with is the idea that we are going to rank everyone by their vulnerability and that the risk factors for, ending their life. By what metrics? Right. I just sent Ariel an article from the New York Times that was talking about this, and it said in the subheading that one group, the non-binary and trans identifying, are at higher risk than young girls, teen girls, who have also presented these same vulnerabilities and feelings of sadness and hopelessness. What metric are we using that is showing that the inconsolable sadness of young girls is not as serious as the inconsolable sadness of gender nonconforming people? Why would we even want to be in a situation where we're doing that and ranking that? Because my belief is these are kids. They are all vulnerable. They all deserve to be treated with dignity, respect, to be safe. And we have to find a way, and we're creative enough to do that without trying to rank and make some sort of hierarchy of who is more vulnerable than other. That just feels like one group is always going to be dehumanized if we do that. There will always have to be someone who's,
Yeah, and maybe just addressing the mental health aspect, because we're all human, and I know you studied psychology and stuff, and just because the gender identity thing is newer in the mainstream colloquium and stuff. Before, there were a lot of stories of gay kids who got bullied, and I used to listen to a lot of true crime, and there were all sorts of horrific things
it's horrible.
Done for that. And for race, obviously, there's been horrific crimes for that, and singling out for that. But so now that it's the hot button issue, now it's come to the forefront. But if we just address, I feel like America's mental health is declining as a whole, and people are suing TikTok now because they created this addictive app. But it's we're just a generation or a culture of people who are susceptible to that, because we all are longing to connect, we're all longing to feel seen and all this stuff. And so but instead of addressing those psychological things, we're just make more laws and bathrooms.
Yeah. You wouldn't want too many things to be about laws. And I mean, I think, Alana, what you're talking about like the empathy, like who are we turning our empathy spotlight on right now? Is it the tiny percentage of people who are trans, or who should be statistically? But it's become 3% now of, Gen Alpha or something, like Gen Z, I don't know, instead of 0.01% like it was a few years ago for a long time. So, but are you pointing our empathy toward the trans non-binary people, or toward like more people, to everyone, to women, sure, like whatever, like there's only so much empathy spotlight to go around,
Right.
but picking a few groups out and going, well, you must be the most vulnerable, so we'll do whatever you guys want for however, I mean, it just doesn't.
It's also like okay, so now we're gonna assume we can pinpoint who's the most vulnerable in our society, and now we have to do exactly this thing, and that's going to prevent them from deciding to end their lives.
Right. Well, what if, okay, so
is that how it works? Are we clear on that? Is that what it is?
We don't have any idea how to do the math on the utility of all this, right? So you go, okay, if we let little penis children who identify as girls, if we let them use the changing rooms in middle school with the girls who are starting to go through female puberty, maybe that will make that AMAB individual, 10% less likely to end their time on this earth. But then you've got 100 girls, or maybe there's 20 in that person's class who are going to be changing. So do we have any idea what it's going to do we have no studies on that, on what it's going to do. And so it is a little infuriating as a female who kind of feels my place in the history of females, where it's a little frustrating to go, okay, just like you guys didn't study our bodies until a few years ago, you just decided we would just use men to study just about everything because you were annoyed that we had cycles that were different, and so you didn't want to deal with that. And so we didn't study the vagina at all. We didn't study women's bodies. And suddenly there are some penis people who say that they want special rights, but you're not going to think at all about the consequences to the vagina people who are going to be affected by that. Because if each vagina person is affected by it 5% or 1%, that's still 20 times 1%. That's 20%. If it's only reducing the not being on Earth anymore chance by 10, and we don't have any idea of how to do that math, but we're not even thinking about the math.
It's a type of metrics that I just think is antithetical to being a human being.
Yeah.
This is not what it is to be a person and to be alive.
We can't make actuarial tables of people's unaliving
We
risks.
also can't tell. We don't have a universally agreed upon definition of sadness or hopelessness.
Right.
We don't walk around with like the Pixar Inside Out emoji on our head.
There's literally no way to measure happiness and
that's
sadness.
what's the tragic and beautiful part of being a human, right? We can't see that inside of other people as we're interacting with them.
Pure utilitarianism and objectivism don't make any sense, right? Because there's no way to know what is best. You can't measure. This is humanity, and so it feels like we're taking so much of the humanity out and going, well, our lawyers can make an argument that it's going to reduce our unaliving risk, and so you have to do what we say or else we're going to emotionally blackmail you about it. Okay, but we've been a little bit animated, I guess, about this. This is, I'm sure, my fault, but I think we should also talk about the kind of what we hear is going on in the schools, not just the restrooms, because what I've heard. And I've heard this from parents. I've heard this from kids. I've read children's books about gender. I've, seen what Libs of TikTok says, and I've seen some other people that I know in person sharing what they think is good, that whatever, and it seems like there are a number of teachers, and I'm not sure that they're being trained to do this, or if it's kind of just teachers decide that this is what they should do with their class. But there are teachers with even young elementary school students who are, and there are books targeted to kids of the ages of 3, 4, 5, right? 6, 7 as well. But where they are saying, look, you might think that you're a girl, but you might really be a boy. Or you might be neither or both or anything else. And just really making it very simplified, this idea that you might be something else. as opposed to the direction I think a lot of us were going and really wanted us to finish going, where we go, yes, I do have flowers on my socks, but I'm still a girl. I do have short hair, but I'm still a girl, and that's okay. And I can, and I think a lot of us, most of this country, got to the place where we go, and by the way, once the kid is, at some age at all, whatever, talk to the parents about, whatever, you can say, and I'm the kind of girl who loves other women, and my partner, and I have children with another, and that's one way a family can look. And all of that kind of like, it's cool, gender flexibility. Boys can be any way they want, can do any careers they want, and they can play with dolls and dresses and whatever. And girls can do whatever career they want and whatever. Now, and it's okay if more women want to be in caring professions, and it's okay if more men want to be doing and making and fixing and analyzing, but some are gonna wanna do the other one, some are gonna be kind of doing a lot of the both, and that's okay. And so you can be anything in any way that you wanna be and love anyone you wanna love, but it doesn't mean that you have the wrong body or that you need to change some fundamental things. You probably were born that way. And are we saying to a group of people, you will never be happy and live a fulfilled life unless you sign up for lifelong pharmaceutical interventions, potentially things that will change your body forever. You can lose all kinds of avenues in life if you do this stuff. And it's like, that's not the message these books are giving. These books are going, yeah, you might really be a girl. And like teaching kids that way of things, it seems that the way to solve this is that you might need to just change your gender. No worries. We're just going to perform some experiments one day on you that we're still figuring out. You're all guinea pigs. It's not gone well for a lot of people in a lot of ways, but it has gone well for some people in some ways. And we really don't even have that much good research on it. Sorry. Anyway, but that's so I'm like, I cannot have these people teaching kids to chop their dicks off.
We love the kids. I think you talked about it once when you're talking about talking about gender and everything. We're having the conversation because we love the kids. We care about the kids. We care about the nonconformist, non-binary, and trans kids. We love them. We want to protect them. We want to keep them safe. We want it to be this, but it might not be, because there is something going on, and you have to just dig a little bit. Like, you don't even have to be that curious. You just have to be a little curious to say, what's going on? Like, who is benefiting from messaging this in a way to people who are so young? And I know that we both know people who have made these decisions as minors and have medically transitioned, and then in their early 20s decided to transition back to their natal gender, sex. I don't know
Let's
which word to use, but
just
whatever
use sex
it is.
For biology,
sex for
and
biology,
gender for.
And
do we have to bleep sex?
And the thing is, like, once you meet people who've had that experience, it changes the whole thing, because they will never be able to be back in a body that is fully healthy as how they were born. It's changed a lot of things. So,
and depending on how far they took it, the consequences are way worse than for some and than others. And it's all kinds of spectrums of stuff. And not only that, I know people who are happy that they transitioned, but would have made some different choices about their medical care if they had really been given a full picture of the cost-benefit analysis and what we don't know. And I think so many people, like I have a friend right now who one of the things, she's having a psychotic break. And among the many things she's decided are definitely true are that she's trans, or he, excuse me. And for her, like, I just am so worried that in this crazy state, because I know as soon as she mentioned gender at the hospital, she checked herself into a hospital, they gave her some, and then, in California. And then she mentions gender, they immediately get her to the clinic, whatever. And the people think that if you go to the clinic, that you've been vetted in some way. And then there's people at the clinic are like, okay, we better. And they've already, talked to her about how she probably is a man. And she says she's feeling gender euphoria and this will whatever. And like, the problem is you're going to start thinking about all the positive aspects of this and all the things that you want, all the good things about getting strong and warm and confident and whatever. And you're not, no one's going to start talking to you yet about the increased chance of a bunch of types of cancer, the rage that you're going to feel, the different relationship you're going to have to women for the rest of your life. Not to mention you might go bald and all kinds of things like that. And you have the bottom growth and how uncomfortable it can be. And so there's so many people who are happy with the transition or somewhat happy or kind of whatever, but they didn't realize how much they were being used as guinea pigs, or that some doctors were really going to be sloppy about a lot of that. I know people who were detransitioning at 42 years old because they finally realized this wasn't the paradigm to think of their lives, and it actually makes them really sad that they chose it.
Yeah. I know people in their 40s who transitioned and are happy and who would never in a million years let their children transition as minors.
Right.
And I think that this choice is very California and representative of what the ethos in California, and it's like, do we want that in our whole country?
Well, I've noticed, sorry, I do have a lot of thoughts, but I know we have to wrap up. But you guys are super passionate, so I'm trying to remember all the things.
There's so much to say.
I have noticed, maybe I'll just list them out and then I'll just get them in there. One, I've heard a lot of kids are getting attacked in bathrooms, so that, from friends who are parents, so that's not good.
No, that's right.
Two, I think there's a lot more visibility and maybe that California liberal, thinking they're doing the right thing, because a lot of celebrities have been coming out saying, well, now my parents, or now my kids are transitioning, or now my kids are this, that, and the other. And I guess the last thing is just, I learned this term today because I'm editing audiobooks, but they call it destructive editing. So I didn't realize it would be a good idea to maybe duplicate the line you're editing, but once you start making changes, you cannot unchange. And I just keep thinking if I had known more, if I had a better idea of the big picture before I started this, I basically hacked it all to pieces and I can't undo it. Yeah. So it just feels so permanent. Is
that in terms of someone's body or the California education system, or what's the metaphor? Okay.
Just, the physical changes and all that, but just for me, going over the parents' head, I did not have the best relationship with my parents growing up, but I'm older. We're trying to fix things and stuff. I know some people don't have good relationships with their families, but just to go over the guardians' heads to say, oh, the schools, you can tell the school, I'm going to transition, or I want this, I want that. And for them to not have to tell the parents, or to not even feel the need to inform the guardians, that part is crazy to me.
Right. And to steel man it a little bit, it's I've heard the argument that just because a kid says something at school, it could be very dangerous if their parents are super abusive or something, and everyone has these kind of dumb religious conservative parents in their head that they think are going to beat the kid with a 2x4, which that I'm sure it's happening in Mississippi and things. I don't know about California, but what I have also heard is from the teacher's perspective, then if the policy is don't tell the kids, you wind up having to do this thing where you are using one name and pronouns for this 12-year-old in school, but then when you write emails to the parents or call them or whatever, you then switch and go back to their sex-based pronouns and their given name. And so you have to keep up this weird facade, and it feels so dishonest to be having this double life that you're facilitating for this child.
Now you're the kid's mistress. And I have been reading about these teachers that are making out, that teacher that was making out with an 11-year-old. We're wow, that 11-year-old
there's a lot wrong. There's a lot of ills in our world.
Pay teachers more.
So we should. We should pay teachers more.
So that it's not only the ones who want to make out with him who take the job. Yeah. Someone has a great bit about that. Anyway. Okay, well, should we see what their policies are?
Yeah,
we could talk about this forever.
Let's see what they have got to say.
So Kamala supports protections. She's long supported transgender rights and earned praise from the LGBTQ advocates going back decades to when she was district attorney in San Francisco, where she prosecuted violence against LGBTQ people as hate crimes. I don't know, the hate crime thing is another thing we could talk about one day, and advocated to change a California legal precedent seen as bigoted. Which one? That was vague. Okay. More recently, the Biden administration expanded Title IX protections to include trans people, though it punted, if you will, on addressing the hot button question of trans athletes in college sports.
Oh, we didn't even get there.
Yeah. Well,
part one,
part
series.
Yeah, stick around. We celebrate transgender and non-binary Americans, Harris said on Transgender Visibility Day in March. We see you, we stand with you, we won't stop fighting for you.
You're only visible on one day in March.
Okay. That's the day of visibility.
Trump is opposed to expanding transgender rights. Trump has said Biden's Title IX expansion is insane and going to destroy women's sports. He has vowed to use federal power to try to stop gender-affirming care for minors, which he equates with child abuse, impose severe consequences for teachers who discuss transitioning with students, and discourage the promotion of gender transitioning for Americans of any age.
Any age.
The promotion? Oh, just discourage the promotion in school, I think, because we're talking about education, maybe.
Well,
No, I'm not sure. Yeah, this is
during his previous term, Trump's administration considered officially defining gender as an immutable biological condition determined at birth, which would make it impossible for people to change gender in the eyes of the law. Well, that's a little extreme.
Defining sex, and then I'm there, and I don't know what the discourage the promotion. I don't know. That's probably just something he said. You can't like stop people from putting a billboard up saying transition here or whatever. That's their right. And I I'm a little bit like, what are the severe consequences? But I don't want teachers discussing transitioning with their students. So.
Right. I most of this sounds pretty reasonable, but I think there are a couple of points in there that could be more extreme, and that's the conundrum we're in, folks.
Exactly.
That's the problem.
So after our discussion and our review of their policies, let's all vote. 1, 2, 3.
I didn't like the end there, but
I didn't like the end there either. I mean,
Right.
again, Bobby, bring back Bobby.
Bring back Bobby.
But I will say this
But-
this source leans left, so I concede that our source document. I would like to know
Right.
more,
Yeah.
but for now,
Look, the Title IX thing is a
Title IX's
big,
big.
big problem.
Yeah.
And because of that, I mean, if I was a one issue voter and this was the only issue,
Right.
I mean, I guess, yeah. But I'm not a one
yeah.
issue voter, so
we're trying to create
Yeah.
holistic voters.
Yes. So I can't wait to watch all the other episodes and see where we land.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's
We
see.
don't know either. Well, thank
Well,
you so
what-
much for.
Is there anywhere that you'd like people to find you?
I'm here in Austin, and I'm like wondering how much I should say.
Well, just what you want.
Yeah, whatever you
I
want
don't
to
think
share.
it was too.
It
That's
wasn't.
the
It
thing. I think
wasn't.
most people
I don't
are
think
honest now about
I don't
this.
think it's offensive at all. I'm here in Austin, and I run some different programs here in Austin. I run some programs with my husband, who's a rabbi, as we mentioned. But we have an organization called Moon Tower Minyan. You can find us there. I run a series with different writers and speakers and artists and comedians, and Ariel was one of our guests, called Moon Tower Verses. And we run a series at Jay-Z, and we're just trying to bring people together to talk about all of the things that are transcendent and that connect us in our humanity, not the things that divide us.
Okay, yes. Let's have her make out with yourself. Okay, thanks, Alana.